Welcome to Austin Industrial. This safety orientation is just the first step in your process of being a safe Austin Industrial employee owner. During this orientation, you will learn and understand the safety expectations for each employee owner. This orientation covers the minimum safety expectations that we expect each and every employee owner to know and understand. As you continue, you will receive further training in areas like plant-specific expectations and specialized safety process expectations. At the end of this orientation, we will test your understanding with a knowledge assessment. So remember, pay attention. The information from this point forward may save your life. We here at Austin Industrial welcome you to our organization. We believe that each of you will find that Austin Industrial is a good company to work with. You are a valued employee owner, and we intend for you to be treated fairly and justly. Only by a means of concerted, conscientious effort from every employee owner and supervisor can we provide a safe, quality, and efficient service to our client. You may have noticed the term employee owner earlier in this presentation. At Austin, we are all employee owners. Since the 1980s, Austin Industries has been a company that is entirely owned by its employees. This is beneficial because each one of us has a hand in making our company better. Your incentive as an Austin employee owner is knowing that as we do better, our company does better, and our company directly affects each and every one of us. Austin Industrial is a merit shop construction and maintenance company with headquarters in Houston, Texas. We serve the chemical, petrochemical, refining, power, and manufacturing industries in the southern and southeastern United States, as well as the Midwest and the Southwest. Austin Industrial is a leader in construction, maintenance, and plant contract services because we enable our customers to meet the challenges of their markets. We apply the latest management, technology, and craft skills to enhance the value of new facilities under construction and to reduce the cost of maintaining existing plants. At Austin Industrial, we value safety, period. You will often hear us say that at Austin Industrial, safety is a value, not a priority. We do not believe that safety is a priority because priorities change depending on what's more important. Think about it this way. You come into work and your job for the day is to perform preventative maintenance on machine number 1. Doing maintenance on this machine is your priority for the day. But at 10 a.m., machine number 2 breaks down and the plan is in emergency mode to get it back up. What just happened to your priority? It changed, right? So why would we ever want safety to be something that changes depending on what's most important for the day? We don't. That is why at Austin Industrial, we consider safety to be a value because values do not change. They are what make you who you are. Simply put, safety is a value. We manage this vital aspect of our business through a comprehensive safety, health, and environmental management system. Our goal, simply stated, is zero accidents. We recognize and reward the safety achievement of our employee owners. We stay on top of the science of safety, and we incorporate new technology into our documented procedure and safe practices. Then we train our people in what we document, and we train, and we train, and we train. Bottom line, our total management system for safety benefits all Austin employee owners.
Hi, I'm David Walls. Welcome to Austin. You know, safety is our #1 core value at Austin. We're in an industry, unfortunately, where more people are maimed, hurt, or even become fatalities than any other industry in the United States. We have a strong moral obligation for all our employee owners, all our subcontractors, anyone that is on our jobs. We are responsible for safety. We want all of you that are listening to this video to understand you have the authority to stop work at any time on an Austin job site. If you're a subcontractor, a trade contractor, a sub-sub, or an employee owner of our organization, if you see an unsafe act, it is your responsibility, it's your moral responsibility. Stop the work and then get someone from Austin, and then let's decide how we need to solve this safety issue. We would much rather stop the work, delay the work for 10 minutes than we would be talking with someone's widow or widower about their spouse is no longer with them. All of us are responsible for each other on the job site, and the only way we can have world-class safety, and I'd say world-class safety, is a mindset where accidents are not accepted. 0 accidents is our goal on all our Austin jobs. We have this moral responsibility to get everyone home to their husbands, their wives, their spouses, their grandchildren, to bring that individual that works on our job home safely every day in the same condition they left their home that morning. You know, all of us have spouses, we have children, we have grandchildren, someone that's counting on us. If you can think of it from that way, that we're a family, and the only way we're going to have world-class safety on any of our job sites is it takes all of us. And again, what is the definition of world-class safety? It's a work environment where accidents are not tolerated, 0 accident mentality, and you are going to make that difference. So we're glad you're on our job site. We want you to be a part of the team, but we want you to be accountable and make us a world-class safety contractor.
Our heritage. Every picture tells a story, and Austin's history is rich in photographs and events. These are about ingenuity and adventure. When you hear and see why these companies were formed, you'll understand how Austin shaped our world. The Austin name first became known in the Texas bridge building field when George Austin came to Dallas in 1889 as an agent for the George E. King Bridge Company of Des Moines, Iowa. His brother Frank joined him in 1894. Together, they formed the Austin Brothers Bridge Company. When the brothers' business started to boom, they hired Charles Moore as a stenographer, who later became chief engineer of the company. Moore bought the contracting part of the company in 1918, when the Austin brothers decided to focus mainly on bridge fabrication and structural steel. When Moore dropped Brothers from the name in 1924, the company, headquartered in Dallas, became known as the Austin Bridge and Associated Companies until 1974, when the parent company, Austin Industries, was formed. George and Frank Austin were innovators for their era with the ability to see the progression of our industry. They foretold the necessities that we all take for granted in the 21st century. Using their insight, they forecast the need for bridges, roads, infrastructures, giving them a distinct advantage over other similar industries. 20th century America was changing dramatically. The development of the automobile, 2 world wars, the Great Depression, and the advent of the interstate highway system all transformed the Austin Bridge business into a more prosperous company. A great help to their salespeople was the Austin Brothers Book of Standard Steel Truss and Beam Span Bridges. It contained drawings of trusses for bridges of varying lengths, widths, and strengths. From this book, the company's estimators could prepare plans and costs for most of the stream crossings on country roads. The designs were simple and economical, but sturdy and adequate for the loading of those early days. As state highways were developed, these old bridges were often dismantled and many of them re-erected so that heavier trucks could use them. Some of those bridges are still carrying traffic today. In the late 1950s, the company grew to include work in the cities of Fort Worth and Austin. This allowed Austin Bridge to enjoy the profitability of two of the highest growth areas in the state. In 1975, Dallas was a burgeoning commercial center, already home to many large corporations. As DFW International Airport was nearing completion, it stimulated more commercial growth. Moore's grandson, Bill Solomon, along with Vernon Brown, Austin Commercial's first president, convinced developer Sanders Campbell to build a twin tower to match the one that had been completed a year earlier. Pioneering a new delivery model with merit shop construction, Austin completed the second tower with a 6-month shorter schedule, lower budget, and better quality than the first tower, successfully launching Austin into commercial construction. The successful completion of the Campbell Center Tower brought Austin Commercial the opportunity to build other significant projects. The Anatole Hotel, American Airlines headquarters, and the towers at Williams Square, the largest office complex ever built in the DFW area at that time. Austin Commercial put $100 million of work in place in 1981, continuing to build amazing feats, including its first high-rise in Dallas's Central Business District, 36-story Olympia and York Tower. And then, a few years later, the 72-story Bank of America Plaza. During the design phase, Austin was able to save $50 million out of the project's $200 million budget. This structure is still the tallest in Dallas and was the 12th largest in the world when it was completed. Because of all of our project's complexities, efficiency, and innovative construction methods, Austin Commercial was awarded the Associated General Contractors Motorola Build America Award, signifying the nation's top achievement in construction. Entering into the new decade of the 1980s, Austin Industries was in the best shape it had ever been in. Highly diversified, Austin held excellent positions in key marketplaces, became even more profitable, and was noticeably a strong organization. As Austin sought to become a serious contender in the private sector markets, we relied on relationships we had within Dallas and the state of Texas. In 1983, Austin Industrial was formed to maintain and construct petrochemical, power, and manufacturing industries. Our heritage includes the construction of 84 fossil fuel power plants, totaling more than 15,000 megawatts, continuous and turnaround maintenance in the petrochemical and refining industries, maintenance and construction services to the manufacturing and pharmaceutical industries, and plant support services. Today, Austin Industrial continues to enter diverse markets in both the U.S. and Canada. We serve the oil, gas, and chemical industries, along with power, energy, and manufacturing businesses, with full service from Austin Industrial.
Austin is about innovation, it's about creativity, it's about customer service, and the people that are successful here know who their customers are and take care of them. It's as simple as that.
Turbines, refineries, energy. These are just 3 examples of a long list of our world-class expertise in keeping America's economy up and running. We confront the challenge to create and maintain something with purpose, something that will stand the test of time. And then, we do it again. Doing the impossible takes more than knowledge and experience. It takes craftsmen to ensure the job is done with quality and excellence. Working with projects that require these specific technical skills that serve our clients takes a special kind of person. That is the Austin advantage. We are Austin Industrial. Austin Industrial History. In 1983, Austin Industrial was formed to maintain and construct petrochemical, power, and manufacturing industries. Our heritage includes the construction of 84 fossil fuel power plants, totaling more than 15,000 megawatts, continuous and turnaround maintenance in the petrochemical and refining industries, maintenance and construction services to the manufacturing and pharmaceutical industries, and plant support services. Today, Austin Industrial continues to enter diverse markets in both the U.S. and Canada. We serve the oil, gas, and chemical industries, along with power, energy, and manufacturing businesses, with full service from Austin Industrial. We are proud of our safety performance and our craft qualifications and training.
Austin Industrial provides services in the maintenance, in small cap and construction categories. Those are our historic nucleus, if you would. We have also added scaffold paint, insulation, and abatement work to that and standalone turnarounds. We've also branched off into Canada and into the Southeast more.
Our values. All success needs a foundation. At Austin, our success is built on our core values of safety, service, integrity, and employee ownership. These core values are the principles that give us the confidence to put our name on every project we complete, always on time and always on budget.
Austin is about innovation, it's about creativity, it's about customer service, and the people that are successful here know who their customers are and take care of them. It's as simple as that.
Our core values are what separate us from our competitors. So there's plenty of people who do the work we do. There's plenty of people who do the work almost as well as we do. Those core values separate us from the rest.
Every day, our employee owners go to work and build everything we touch with excellence and care. We don't just work for Austin, we own it. We are Austin. Our safety. Safety is our sacred responsibility. We value our employee-owner family, and a family should always protect one another. The lives and health of our employees, owners, families, subcontractors, and vendors are treasured as well. Austin has a safety record that is second to none. You are all members of this Austin family. Austin Industrial's safety record is consistently better than the industry's national average. We have received numerous VPP star sites and continue to be a leader in this program.
We empower employee owners to do the right things. We expect our employee owners to make the right choices, to follow all the rules and procedures and the policies set within the Austin Industrial Guidelines.
Safety is extremely important to the company. At least on the industrial side, it's a price of entry into the markets. If you can't lead with stellar world-class safety performance, you don't get the work. And then to maintain that performance and stay ahead of the competition, it's just mandatory.
Well, I know our safety performance is driven from our senior leadership down. It has been since the day I started with Austin Industrial. Safety has been the core value since I started this company back in 1995. So it starts from the senior leadership, and we drive it down to every level within the organization to our employee owners. And it starts with visible senior management engagement. It's proven to our employees that we mean what we say. It's backing our employees up when we empower our employee owners to stop any unsafe work acts, and when they do stop those unsafe work acts, that we positively recognize that employee owner for that and not criticize or condemn that employee.
Safety is very important to Austin. We care about our people. We care about the work they do. Most importantly, we care about how safely that work is done. So we work very hard with our employees to understand that. We can find a number of employees to do the work and to do the work well. Much more challenging to find the ones who can do it safely. So once they understand that that's our expectation, we do a lot with our employees to make sure that that's not only following the rules, but it's doing it because that's the culture we expect from our employees. Once they're doing it for them and not for me or not for Austin's safety rules, they're doing it for their protection. You get a lot more buy-in, and it's easier to understand instead of going to page 6 or page 7, paragraph 1. It's all about their internal belief and their ability to provide a livelihood for their family in the right manner. So that's going home safe.
Well, we're in a life or death business. There are thousands of employee owners that are on job sites where every day someone could get seriously hurt or be killed. And Austin takes safety very seriously, and we spend a lot of resources to make sure that our people are properly trained and have the resources and tools and equipment to perform their work safely.
Safety starts with you. You've heard me talk about world-class safety performance. World-class safety performance is a culture and an environment in a company where accidents are not accepted. Zero accident mentality. As controlling employer on all our job sites, we have a moral obligation to get all employees home to their family and friends safely, the same condition they arrived that morning.
Our service. At Austin, we have a culture of service that enables us to lend a helping hand to customers, employee owners, and the communities in which they live. This solid service foundation is yet one more advantage that separates us from other companies.
I feel that every contract that is executed with our clients in the spirit of partnership. And that gives us the edge. We go out wanting to be a partner, with our clients.
Service is very important with our customers. We are a service company. That's what we're here for. So we're here to provide the service to our customers and to our employees.
At Austin Industrial, customer service means aligning with the customers, their key business drivers, and we have a formal process by which we do that and measure it. So we know as our customers' needs change, we change with them. And you couple that with the employee ownership and the accountability there, it's a winning combination.
Integrity. Austin has a rich tradition that started in the late 1800s and has guided our course up until now. Integrity has always been the cornerstone of our success, and it continues to be the guiding force in all we do.
Your morals and your values are something that you should live by, and as well as with your fellow coworkers.
Integrity is very important to us. We search hard to find the employees we hire and put on our job sites. They have a lot of freedom to interpret our in-job task. So what we expect from our employees is not only to do the work in a quality manner when they're not directly supervised, to give us that finished product that the client wants and that we want, to give us the recognition with our peers to continue working in industry.
What integrity means to me is really the reason why I'm still here with Austin Industrial. I believe in integrity carries our culture, it defines who we are, it makes us transparent with our owners, and I believe it gives us the competitive edge against our competitors in that category there.
Employee ownership. In 1986, Bill Solomon, now retired Austin Industries chairman, established the Austin Industries Employee Stock Ownership Plan, ESOP, transferring 60% ownership of the company to its employees. He also set up a plan for the company to become 100% owned by its employees' owners by 2000, which was completed on schedule. Employee ownership became an opportunity to galvanize the longevity of Austin and ensure that it remained a leader in the industry for years to come. Employee ownership creates an advantage over other companies because it instills a sense of responsibility in every member. Each employee has a vital role, not only in the successful outcome of a project, but in the very reputation Austin has worked so hard to maintain.
Well, ownership always has been, and certainly today, is part of the company's core values. I think everybody recognizes that. Everybody also recognizes employee ownership, as we know it today in the ESOP, has not always been part of the history. When I say ownership always has, I think a sense of ownership and participation on the part of the people in the organization, each of them tending to feel this is my company, not somebody else's company, which is a very good thing, has always been part of the company's history. And in a way, that's the earliest roots of our employee ownership. So we started down that path in 1986, and we completed it 15 years later, as we had intended to do. And that established the structure, which I think will give continuity to this business. If the employee owners continue to be as responsible in that role as they have been to date, it should guarantee the company's continuity in perpetuity.
What distinguishes us from our competitors, I think, would be the employee ownership. When you get a group of people working together that are employee owners, it's just amazing the results that you see. The partnership, the camaraderie, it's just amazing, and our clients see that.
Employee ownership is a very important core value here at Austin Industrial. I mean, it's who we are. We own this company. It's like your baby. When you raise your baby, you want what's best for your baby. It's the same way here at this company. We want to make the best decisions, give the best customer service, because we want to be around for the long haul. We've been around for almost over 100 years, and we want to continue to be here. We own this company, and it's great, and I love it.
Imagine a company where every employee is an owner. Every employee reflects Austin because every employee bears the name of the Austin family. But ownership means more than just possession. Ownership is more than just financial benefits. Ownership involves a deep sense of responsibility.
What gives me the most pride about Austin is being an employee owner. I drive down the road and see a building we built, a plant we built. I tell my kids that Dad's company built that, and that's what gives me the pride.
We have a higher calling here. We just don't pour concrete and steel and weld things. The businesses and the customers that we serve power the American economy with utility plants, refineries, things like the airports that we build, the universities, the hospitals, the sports stadiums and public assembly, all the roads and bridges and so forth. Those elements power the American economy, transport people, save lives, educate people, and many of the products that we provide and the services that we provide are basically huge structures, right, that last a long time. So it's really powerful when you're just randomly driving around with another employee owner and that have been with the company a long time, and they point out things that 20 years ago I built that. You know, I was on the team that built that too. And it's really touching to hear that.
We help each other out. We're a small group out here. Everybody kind of looks out for each other safety-wise, or if somebody needs help loading or unloading or anything here in the yard, we all kind of help pitch in and help each other out, and it's a good environment to be in.
We do treat each other like family. It's a lot of hard work, but we support each other and help each other through. The president always has an open door. If you ever run into any roadblocks or have a problem, you can always go to the president if you need help.
What makes Austin Industrial a great company to work for is the family culture, the top priority of safety, the fact that we're employee-owned. It makes us all feel like we're part of a big family and everyone is important. I just love working for a company that holds those things in such high regard.
Employee ownership is important to Austin because every person that is employee owner feels part of the team, part of the owning group of the company. We feel a part of it. We feel the need to succeed because we are Austin.
We are Austin. Austin Industries is a corporation that our clients can have complete confidence in due to our legacy of reliability, honesty, and integrity. Our almost 100-year-old history is rich with projects that some would say were impossible. Austin has been part of some of the most prestigious projects throughout the United States. We are Austin, and bearing that name comes with the reputation of meeting challenges head-on and winning them. As a result, employee owners are able to have the rare traits of humility and confidence merged into one. This is because we are not only part of a great legacy, but we bear the responsibility to uphold that legacy and carry it forward for the generations to come. Our work. Austin Industrial is the largest maintenance contractor in the Houston area. We service more than 120 active maintenance and capital construction sites. We have a long-standing award-winning reputation, highly regarded by our customers for delivering projects on time, safely, and with the highest quality. The landmark work we've done continues to lead the industry. We're proud to serve our customers through our people, performance, and solutions.
By 2018, Austin Industrial should be approaching $1 billion. We'll more than double between now and then, and we will have made some progress in our new market offerings that we have.
Our people. Austin is a company that has a passion for our people, our culture, and our values. After all, that's what made us successful for nearly a century and will continue to drive our success. We have confidence in our work and hear the honorable recognition given us by our peers and clients. Above all, we know that by doing a superior job for our clients and ourselves, we feel a sense of satisfaction when we go home to our families and loved ones to let them know we're safe. We uphold our core values at the highest level, and we serve our clients well. We also tell everyone we know how incredibly fortunate we are to be an employee owner of our well-respected and dignified Austin family.
Austin has a bright future of explosive growth. We expect to double the size of the enterprise over the next 5 years. We must continue our culture of safety, service, integrity, and employee ownership well into the future.
My name is Lily Portales.
My name is Vanessa Rodriguez.
My name is Ernie Edwards.
My name is Connie Jason.
My name is Jacob Rivers.
My name is Dominique Gray.
My name is Barry Babiak.
And I am Austin.
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 We are Austin.
To be an employee at Austin Bridge and Road is something that comes natural because my dad worked here since 1946, so I never really thought about working anywhere else. And being the family atmosphere that we enjoy around here, it means everything to me to be able to do a good job for the people that I feel are kin to me in a certain way. So that's one of the main reasons I've worked this long, is just because I would feel like I was letting them down if I ever left. So that's one of the reasons.
What if I told you, after 68 years in operation, a company would be sold to its employees? This is the story of Austin Industries. 30 years of ESOP, 30 years of excellence. Austin Industries dates back to the late 1800s, where Frank and George Austin started the Austin Brothers Bridge Company. In 1918, the brothers sold the company to Charles S. Moore, where he kept the name and the official history of the company began. The year was 1986. Then company CEO Bill Solomon began talks of ESOP.
It occurred to me in 1986 that employee stock ownership plans was a way to have a win-win, allow the family over an extended period of time, which turned out to be 15 years, to sell its shares to a trust called an ESOP, which would hold the stock for the benefit of the employees and to buy that stock for them out of the company's own earnings so that they wouldn't have to put up anything for it.
Yeah, back in 1986 when we were told that the company was going to start something called an ESOP, well, no one here knew what ESOP meant. The people in the field were talking back and forth. People in the yard, no one really knew. So we were told what it was, still didn't know what it was, really. So that's one of the reasons I kind of got into it, to try to figure out where I could answer people's questions. Everybody then asked the same questions that they ask now when I explain to somebody new about ESOP. What are the strings attached to it? Nothing could be this simple. And so I love it. I love to tell them, it's just this simple. There's no strings attached. There's no ulterior motives, nothing under the table. The people that designed this ESOP program for us did it for the people and not for any other reason. So there's no strings attached. It's all for us.
To me, to be an employee owner, it means pride in the work that I see we've done, and also thinking about every decision that I make, how it might affect the bottom line of the company. As a person nearing retirement, I feel very good about my ESOP account and how it has grown over the years. What started out as very little has multiplied quite a bit.
Today, Austin employee owners are invested in the stewardship of Austin Industries resources and are currently engaged in projects with a completion value of $2 billion. Pride in ownership has driven Austin's continuous growth and is a strong core value throughout the company. As owners of the company, every employee owner has a stake in Austin's success. The quality and performance we deliver to our customers form the foundation for everyone's success.
My name is Rhonda Ewing, and I am Austin.
Me llamo Andrés Camarillo y yo soy Austin.
My name is Jenny Simpson, and I am Austin.
My name is Charlie Spence, and I am Austin.
I grew up here in Artesia, New Mexico. Been here for most of my life. Me growing up and playing, so I played tight end, it did show me that being on the line, you're an important part of the team, just as well as here as at work. You have an important job to do. If you're not there, you can't play without you. Just like here, if we're not working together, the job's not getting done. Our teamwork here as a crew is very important. Being a part of the team does motivate me to get up and go to work. On a day-to-day basis, we get our memo in the morning. We get in a little group, and we knock it out as a team. We do maintenance work on exchangers, towers, the asphalt, diesel unit, hydrogen unit, cat unit, valve changes, exchanger pulls. We do work on everything, and we do them with a smile.
Richard Cooch is one of our Boilermakers. That he's a level 3 guy, but he's very, very smart at what he does. He tries, he volunteers for a lot of stuff. He's willing to learn. He's wanting to do some safety stuff, and we're progressing him along. Actually setting him up as a lead type person right now to supervise. So he's really coming along a long ways.
You don't need a degree here. Bookwork's not going to show you what we're doing around here. We learn by hands-on.
Here at Holly Frontier Navajo Refining, there's a lot of opportunity to grow and go in different areas of operations. College is not for everybody. Kids coming out of high school, they can come out here and he can make the same money that engineers that have spent 6 and 8 years in school, and all he's got to do is come out here and put his head to it, and this is a good place to work. It really is.
When I first started here, I didn't know anything. We do have a 40-hour class that we do before we can come out to the plant. That 40-hour class, the people you're working with tell you how to do things. You can start training, get your hands dirty. It took a while to learn. It's a process. You pay attention to it and you'll learn it pretty quick.
What we do is bring them in at entry level. We teach them for 90 days, evaluation period, bring you along, try to get you set up in a school. We're going to get you in a craft to become a certified craftsman. You can be a pipe fitter, you can be an electrician, you can be a welder, operator. There's multiple crafts you can be. And we have a lot of opportunities, and we have a lot of places all across the country that we move people and hire people.
I really do enjoy my work. Here, the people I work with, they're real good. You know, you're caring for someone else, looking out for their lives. My crew is a family, you know. We help this place run. We're the heart of this place. I love my job. I love working here. I wouldn't change it for the world.
Under the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, or OSHA, every employee has the right to report all work-related injuries and illnesses. Employers, including Austin Industrial, are prohibited from discharging or in any manner discriminating against employees for reporting work-related injuries or illnesses. If you sustain any injury or illness while at work, you must immediately report the injury or illness to your supervisor and ensure that the highest level of supervision at your job site is also informed. If you are not satisfied with the reporting by your supervisor, you have the right to report the incident to management by using the numbers listed on your site's emergency call-out posting. At Austin Industrial, the safety and health of its employee owners is the most important aspect of our business. Because we care about your well-being, we require that you report any work-related accidents, injuries, illnesses, and near misses. By doing so, we can ensure that you receive adequate treatment in order to be able to get you back to work as soon as possible. Report the accident or near miss to your supervisor as soon as possible. Reporting accidents as soon as possible will aid in the investigations and getting you the care that you need. Reporting a near miss will help us to ensure that we have all safety measures in place to make sure that a similar accident does not occur. Do not leave the job site with a work-related injury or illness without first reporting it to your supervisor. At the end of your task, there is a section on the JSA that asks if you were injured on the job. Because Austin feels so strongly about the issue, failure to report injuries, illnesses, or near misses will result in disciplinary action up to and including termination of employment. As with any work-related accident or incident, we require that you report all first aid work-related injuries to ensure that you receive adequate treatment. It does not matter how minor the injury may seem, report it. This is for 2 reasons. It ensures that you get adequate treatment to get you back to work quickly, and first aids are leading indicators. They are relatively minor injuries that can help us determine if we have a problem. If we start to see an increase in a certain type of first aid injury, we can review our policies, procedures, and safety measures to ensure that we are stopping these injuries before they get more severe. To accomplish our mission of a safe work environment, we must establish a culture that believes in the fundamental principles and values that we uphold at this company. In doing so, we establish a culture here at Austin Industrial. This culture revolves around our belief that safety is the #1 value for all of the work that we perform. At Austin Industrial, we have established a program to help us achieve this goal. This program is called Driving to Zero. Driving to Zero is the safety initiative and belief at Austin Industrial that we can achieve a zero accident job site. We achieve this through an established zero incident safety culture. This safety culture is the belief that we can make the correct choices in everything that we do to ensure that we perform our work as safely as possible. So basically, if we have a culture and a mindset that truly believes that all accidents are preventable, and we are willing to make the choices to perform our work safely as we know how, we can achieve zero accidents at our job sites. A safety culture is the presence of safety, not the absence of accidents. Not having an accident does not mean that safety is continually cultivated on a job. It may simply mean that an opportunity for an accident hasn't happened, or we have just been lucky. Instead of focusing just on whether or not we've had accidents, we take a proactive approach with employee engagement to safe activities. Safety culture is the invisible force that dictates the behavior of the employee owners and management. It is a value. It is the belief that safety is the most important aspect of our business. Driving to Zero is the commitment to make the right choice to operate our business safely each day, to cause no harm to ourselves, our fellow employee owners, our customers, or our neighboring communities. This is a commitment that only you can make. Will you choose to do the right things, to make the right choices in everything that you do? Driving to Zero is having a deep sense of personal responsibility for our safety and making the right choices as individuals and as a team. It's understanding that we want you to make these positive safety choices, but more importantly, you want to make these positive safety choices in everything that you do. Driving to Zero is a value that we all share that is deeply rooted in our culture and reflects in every aspect of our business. Safety is a value, not a priority. Priorities change depending on what's more important at any given time. Safety does not change depending on what is important. That is why safety is a value, because values do not change. Values are what make us who we are. If we do all of these things, we will impact our job sites and have a positive safety culture. If each and every individual feels a responsibility to perform his or her work safely and wants to work safely and makes the commitment to work safely and chooses to have a positive attitude toward the people they work with and want to see them work safely, then we will have a positive safety culture at our job sites. Individual behavior is the most influential factor in keeping our employee owners and our sites safe every day. Each employee owner makes a choice to do something safe or unsafe. If every one of us makes the correct choice, we will avoid accidents. So continually ask yourself, am I doing this as safely as I know how? Am I making the right choices? If that answer is yes, then we are working towards a positive safety culture. If that answer is no, then we need to stop what we are doing and evaluate our current situation. Figure out where we are falling short and fix the problem. Talk with your supervisor if you don't know how to fix the problem. So Driving to Zero is all about changing our mindset to the belief that safety takes precedent over all other factors when we work. Safety is a value. Driving to Zero is changing our behaviors, is choosing to make the right decisions, choosing to be safe, and choosing to not take shortcuts. It's about reinforcing our positive behaviors and changing our negative habits. Driving to Zero is about changing the way we work by emphasizing and engaging in safe actions when we are working. So now that we know what Driving to Zero is, what it means, and what it's all about, let's talk about how we can drive to zero. First, get involved. Don't just stand on the sidelines. Be a part of the safety presence at your job site. Every employee owner participates in audits. Always watch out for the safety of the people you are working around. Be engaged in the safety training. Don't zone out. Ask questions. Question what you are doing and ask yourself, is this the safest way? Work for zero. Put forth the effort. Make a personal commitment to complete your assigned task in a safe manner. Completing a task in a safe manner is accomplished by focusing on every movement that you make throughout the task from start to finish and doing every single part of that task safely. And finally, speak up for zero. Don't be silent. Make it a point to encourage your fellow employee owners to work safely and address or bring attention to the hazards you feel are unsafe. Anytime you overlook a safety violation, you are saying that it's okay to work unsafe. We all have to do this together. At Austin Industrial, every employee owner is empowered. You have the power and the obligation to stop unsafe work. We will stand behind you 100% of the time. Remember, asking me to overlook a simple safety violation would be asking me to compromise my entire belief and value toward your personal safety. There are two principles around this empowerment, and that is stop and pushback. Pushback and stop are two important principles to remember in this orientation. Remembering these two principles throughout your work at Austin will not only help you to stay safe, but also keep your fellow employee owners safe. Pushback is simply stopping and refusing to perform unsafe work. Any employee owner has the right to respectfully refuse to perform any work that violates federal law, such as OSHA, Austin's safety policies, customer safety policies, or anything that they feel represents a threat to the health of themselves and those around them. They have the right to push back without any fear of disciplinary action, so long as they've acted with sincerity. Before returning to work, all problems will be addressed and resolved. Stop is simply about people caring for people. It is your responsibility to look out for your fellow employee owner's safety, knowing that they are doing the same for you. When you see someone performing work unsafely, you have the responsibility to stop them and respectfully explain to them why their actions are unsafe. If the unsafe act is beyond your control, you have the responsibility to inform your supervisor. Remember, when you turn a blind eye to a fellow employee owner that is performing work unsafely, you are basically telling that person that it's okay to work unsafe. And asking me to overlook a simple safety violation would be asking me to compromise my value towards safety and your personal well-being. Stop work cards will be issued to each employee owner so that they can be reminded that they have the responsibility to stop any unsafe work when they see it. At the end of this video, you will be asked to make a personal commitment to safety. This commitment is to perform every job, every task, as safely as possible every time. The choice is up to you. One of the most important processes for the type of work that we perform here at Austin Industrial is hazard recognition. Hazard recognition means finding or discovering things in our work that can cause an injury or illness to the people performing the work, the people near the work, or the work environment. In everything that we do, it is absolutely critical to discover the hazards and control them before they can cause an injury. Hazard recognition is a proactive approach to your safety. There are 3 stages to hazard recognition. The first stage is before the hazard occurs. This is analyzing the job that you're going to perform and finding those hazards that can lead to an accident or a near miss. The second stage is while the hazard has the potential to occur. This stage takes place while the work is being performed. It involves analyzing the work that is taking place and ensuring that we have identified all hazards and controlled them. The final stage is after a hazard has occurred. This is analyzing the hazard that has been presented and why the hazard wasn't controlled to begin with, and how we can ensure that it doesn't happen again. Identifying hazards before they happen is the most important aspect of hazard recognition. This is because controlling hazards before they can affect a worker eliminates the possibility of an accident. The first step in hazard recognition is how we get in front of accidents, anticipate what can go wrong, and eliminate the possibility of having things go wrong on the job. The first step that we take is to perform a job safety analysis, or JSA. A job safety analysis, or JSA, is performed for each and every task that we do. In other words, we want to plan the work and then implement the plan. The JSA is a tool that we use to plan safety into the work that we perform. All work that will be performed will be planned using a JSA. What this form accomplishes is a written plan for executing the job safely and has essentially 4 basic steps to complete. First, you will want to determine what you're going to accomplish in your job. This is a broad description. Second, once you know what you want to accomplish, determine how you will perform this job. This is a series of steps to get from the starting point of the job to completing the job. Third, once you know what the steps are, you can now identify what hazards exist in performing each step of the job. And finally, you can now determine how to control or mitigate each hazard that you have identified in order to keep everyone involved protected from the hazard. It is very important that we get beyond the superficial recognition of hazards. All too often we see complex jobs being performed, but only a handful of steps, hazards, or precautions are listed. The JSA is a 2-page document front and back, that will help ensure that we have planned and identified all of the hazards, as well as determine how we will protect ourselves from these hazards in order to work safely. Now, let's take a step-by-step walkthrough on completing the JSA process. It is very important to understand the process of the JSA. The best method of producing a quality product is to work with a crew to write the JSA. Although one person may be writing the JSA, everyone on the crew must be involved to ensure the perspectives of all are captured, because everyone in the crew brings a unique experience and understanding. If possible, write the JSA in the work area so that you can visualize the work. Page 1 of the JSA form contains basic information such as lockout/tagout information, basic job steps, hazards, mitigation of hazards, and tasks between the tasks. The first section is to write down the basic information about the job that you are going to be performing. This section contains important information that must be filled out completely. This section provides us with a very good overview of the job that we will be performing and basic safety information involved. In this example, we have provided sample responses written in red to show what information is expected in filling out the JSA form. Additional PPE. This is where we will write any other specific PPE that will be needed to complete the job. Think about the steps to complete the job and see if anything else needs to be listed. You may have to come back to this after determining your steps to complete the task. For example, in this job, we're going to need a respirator and a chemical suit while we break the line on the discharge pipe. Site location. This is the specific location within the plant where you will be performing the task. This is not the job site name. So in this example, we listed that we are working at Tank Farm and specifically the number 4 cyclohexane tank. Date. Place the date that you are writing and performing the work. Wind. Indicate the wind position is important for emergency evacuations, especially in the event of a chemical release. Task description. This is where you will list the brief description of what the task is. What are you trying to accomplish in this task? For example, we will be replacing the PCV valve on the cyclohexane tank discharge line. It's short, to the point, and basically lays out what we are going to do. Safety shower, eye wash location. Identifying the location of the closest safety shower and eye wash station before starting work is very important so that you don't find yourself in an emergency situation and need to find the safety shower. Supervisor. List your direct supervisor here. Analysis performed by. The person who physically wrote the JSA will write their name here. Be sure to print your name. You will be signing the form later. This is a good time to point out that the JSA will be physically written by one person. However, it is expected that the entire crew involved in performing the job will participate and be engaged in writing the JSA as a group. This is important because everyone will bring different experience and perspectives to a job to develop a much better finished product. Permits required. In this section, you will list any required permits to begin the job. For example, a safe work permit, a line break permit, or a hot work permit. Number of EOs on the crew. This will be all of the people expected to work on the crew performing this job. Title of the person completing the JSA. The person writing the JSA will list their craft or job title here. While this information seems basic, it is important to have a good end product and an overall safe, quality job. The JSA form gives you a guide for using the hierarchy of safety controls. When dealing with safety, we have to follow the hierarchy of controls. The hierarchy of controls has a lot of different uses in the work that we perform. The range in the most effective control of hazards, such as elimination of the hazard, to the least effective control of hazards, which is personal protective equipment or PPE. Since hands are a focus area in the company, we will look at hand safety examples along with other examples as we continue through the JSA process. The hierarchy of controls is a range of methods to control hazards in a most effective to least effective control. The most effective way to control hazards is to eliminate or substitute them. Elimination of a hazard means to physically remove the hazard. Actually, removing the hazard itself is the safest way to perform the work. Elimination of the hazard can work in many ways. For example, with hands, instead of holding a striking tool in your hand, you can use a tool holder that removes your hand from the line of fire. Another example is if employees must work high above the ground, the hazard can be eliminated by moving the piece they are working on to the ground level to eliminate the need of working at heights. Substituting the hazard means replacing the existing hazard with something that does not add additional hazards. For example, with hands, this could mean using a rivet gun instead of hammering rivets into place. Another example may be replacing lead-based paint with acrylic paint. To be an effective control, the new product must not produce another hazard. Because airborne dust can be hazardous, if a product can be purchased with a larger particle size, the smaller product may be effectively substituted with the larger product. Can you think of other ways that we can eliminate or substitute hazards in the workplace? Engineering controls isolate people from the hazard. For example, this could mean using lockout, tagout, blinds, blinks, or double block and bleed in a hazardous energy situation. A crew might build a work platform rather than purchase or replace and maintain fall arrest equipment. Enclosure and isolation creates a physical barrier between personnel and hazards, such as using remotely controlled equipment. Fume hoods can remove airborne contaminants as a means of engineering control. Can you think of other ways that we can engineer the hazard out of our work? Administrative controls change the way that people work. For hands, this might involve mandatory rest breaks when performing repetitive motion tasks such as grinding or identifying and avoiding pinch points. Other examples of administrative controls include procedure changes, employee training, and installation of signs and warning labels. Administrative controls do not remove the hazard, but limit or prevent people's exposure to hazards, such as completing road obstruction at night when fewer people are driving. Can you think of other administrative controls in our work? The last line of defense for a worker is to use the appropriate PPE for the job. For hands, this may include choosing the right glove, such as cut resistant for sharp edges. Other types of PPE include welding hoods, face shields, respirators, harnesses, lanyards, and other types. All too often we rely simply on PPE for our sole protection in the workplace. And this results in accidents where the PPE was rendered useless in preventing the injury. The PPE we use has to be 1. Adequate for the task, and 2. Used with any other combination of controls, for example, elimination, substitution, engineering, and administrative. This section of the JSA gives us an opportunity to ensure that we have completed any lockout tagout requirements to complete the job. If lockout tagout is required, select yes in this section. This makes us think about and answer 2 more questions if we need to perform lockout tagout on this job. First, anytime we are performing a lockout tagout, we have to list what is being locked out. This is accomplished using an Austin energy isolation list, or the customer will have an energy isolation list or energy isolation plan or energy control procedure. When performing a lockout tagout, everyone working and placing a lock on the equipment must review this plan. Second, when reviewing the energy isolation list, you must verify that all required signatures are in place before starting work. This could be the plant operator, the lockout tagout champion, an Austin supervisor, or other. If required, each person placing a lock on the equipment or lockbox will sign the energy isolation list. The next part of the JSA is to list the sequence of basic steps, the hazards involved, and the corrective actions and controls to protect the crew from the hazards. Your flow will begin with identifying the basic steps to complete the job. Once you identify your basic steps, you can then look at each step and determine the hazards involved with that step. Once the hazards are identified for each step to complete the job, you can then determine how you will protect yourself from each hazard that you identified. Listing the basic job steps to complete a task is extremely important for 2 reasons. First, it gets the crew thinking about the job and how it will be performed. Much of our safety is derived from simply thinking. This is why we review JSAs every day, because it gives you an opportunity to focus your mind on the task that you will be performing. When identifying the hazards involved with your work, it is much easier to look at each step and identify the hazards for the step than it is to look at the overall job and try and come up with hazards looking at the big picture. Without identifying the steps, you will be looking at the whole job and trying to come up with hazards for removing and replacing the pump and the motor. With the steps broken out like we see here, you are now coming up with hazards for performing the lockout tagout, performing the first line break, using a forklift, transporting the pump and motor, and using hand tools. You have 8 sequential steps that you can analyze for hazards instead of looking at the big picture and trying to figure out the hazards. This makes hazard identification much more accurate and efficient. Remember, this portion of the JSA is never complete until the job is over. If you change your work method or how you will perform the work, increase the amount of steps, or anything else, you have to stop and address this on the JSA. The JSA is an open-ended process, and we can always revisit it and make changes as our work scope, hazards, controls, and environment changes. For example, you may find out that the outlet line on the discharge pump is completely corroded, and you will have to remove it with a crane. This creates changes to the work scope, steps to complete the job, hazards, tools and equipment, and precautions in order to complete the job. Always stop to address the changes. Identifying the hazards involved is one of the most important aspects of the JSA, because if we do not identify a hazard, then we have no opportunity to control or eliminate the hazard that can cause an accident. This step illustrates why the JSA is considered a process, because to identify the hazards accurately and efficiently, you need to look at each step to complete the job and identify the hazards involved with each step. So you would start with step 1 and go through step 9. For each step, you would identify the hazards involved with performing each step. For example, step 1 is performing the first line break. The hazard is the possibility that the line contains some hazardous energy. Step 2 and step 3 is using a forklift. The hazards are forklift use, such as improper operation, not inspecting the forklift, or not using a certified operator. Step 4 is placing the pump and the motor on the dolly. Some hazards include load shifting and not being secured. And this goes on until you have analyzed each step and identified the hazards involved. Doing it this way gives the crew a much better opportunity to identify hazards than if you were just looking at the job as a whole and trying to come up with the hazards. Remember, this portion of the JSA is never complete until the job is over. If you change your work method or how you will perform the work, increase the amount of steps, or other changes, you have to stop and address the changes on the JSA. The JSA is an open-ended process, and we can always revisit it and make changes to our work scope, hazards, controls, or environmental changes. For example, you may find out during the work that you will need a torch to cut the bolts on the flange. This changes the tools and equipment, the hazards, and the precautions to complete the job. Always stop to address the changes. Again, we continue to understand how the JSA is a process. This part, and possibly the most important part, is to figure out how you can perform the job without having an accident occur due to the hazards that are involved. The JSA is a process because without successfully identifying the steps to complete the job and subsequently identifying the hazards for each step involved, you will not be able to identify the control measures that you need to put into place in order to control or eliminate the hazards involved with the work. To identify the precautions accurately and efficiently, you do the same thing you did on the previous step. You look at each individual hazard that you will face, and you will list what precautions you need to take control or eliminate the hazard. For example, the first hazard that we identified is having potential for pressure or liquid in the line. Our precaution is to lock out and tag out the line, which is an engineering control, to break the line away from you, which is an administrative control, and finally to wear personal protective equipment as if the line is charged, which is a PPE control. Another hazard that we identified is pinch points. Our precaution is to identify and avoid the pinch points, which is an administrative control. The 12th hazard on the list is welding fumes, and we will be placing a fan to displace the fumes out of the welder's breathing zone. This is another example of engineering controls. Remember, this portion of the JSA is never complete until the job is over. If you identify more hazards, you have to stop and address this on the JSA. The JSA is an open-ended process, and we can always revisit it to make changes as our work scope, hazards, controls, or environment changes. For example, you may find out during the work that the motor is too large for the forklift and you will need to use an overhead crane. This changes the tools, equipment, hazards, and precautions to complete the job safely. Always stop to address the changes. The bottom section of the JSA is to identify tasks between the task, or TBT. In our work, TBT accounts for over 50% of the accidents that occur. This tells us that a majority of people aren't getting hurt performing the job, but rather doing things between the jobs, such as getting tools, climbing ladders, moving objects that are in your path, and other items. In order to combat this growing trend in safety, we will apply the same process of identifying the TBT, the hazards it presents, and how we will protect ourselves from these hazards. First, identify what tasks between the tasks will occur in your job. For example, in this job, we will be climbing a ladder to lock out the lines, walking to the shop and the tool room, and using the freight elevator to transport the pump and the motor. Once you have identified what TBT are involved in your work, you can then look at each TBT and determine what hazards are involved. For example, we identified climbing a ladder as a TBT of this job. Our hazard will be using the ladder and fall hazards. Finally, once the hazards of each TBT has been identified, we can implement precautions or mitigation actions to protect ourselves from these hazards. For example, we listed there are fall hazards with using the ladder. Our precaution will be to use 100% fall protection when we are above 6 foot. At the end of this section, you will be reminded, if additional hazards are introduced, this JSA must be updated or a new JSA created and communicated within the entire work group. Verify with supervisor to determine if changes need to be made to the safe work permit or any other permits that have been issued for this job. The second page of the JSA contains valuable information such as a hazard checklist, a stop work authorization, a sign-off section, a supervisor sign-off section, a job closeout, and an audit section. The final section for completing the JSA before starting work is a guide to help you identify the hazards involved with your work. This simple checklist is useful for reviewing the steps involved in the work that you will be performing and checking any hazards that may exist in each step. This tool is useful because it asks you yes or no to help come up with the hazards rather than coming up with the hazards off the top of your head. However, be cautioned. Not every hazard that you will face in your work will be listed on this checklist. If a hazard is not listed on this checklist, the hazard must be written on the front page of your JSA. A critical principle to remember is your stop work authority. Applying this principle throughout your work at Alston will not only help you to stay safe, but also keep your fellow employee owners safe. Stop work authority is simply stopping and refusing to perform unsafe work. Any employee owner has the right to respectfully refuse to perform any work that you feel violates the federal law, which is OSHA, Alston safety policies, customer safety policies, or anything that you feel represents a threat to the health of yourself or those around you. You have the right to refuse this work without any fear of disciplinary action, so long as you've acted in sincerity. Before returning to work, all problems will be addressed and resolved. Stop work cards will be issued to each employee owner. This stop work card gives the employee owner the responsibility to stop the work when an unsafe act is taking place. Stop is simply about people caring for people. It is your responsibility to look out for your fellow employee owner's safety, knowing that they are doing the same thing for you. When you see someone performing work unsafely, you have the responsibility to stop them and respectfully refuse and explain to them why their actions are unsafe or at risk. If the unsafe act or at-risk behavior is beyond your control, you have the responsibility to inform your supervisor. Remember, when you turn a blind eye to a fellow employee owner that is performing work unsafely, you are basically telling that person that it is okay to work unsafe. And asking me to overlook a simple safety violation would be asking me to compromise my entire value towards safety and your personal well-being. This section of the JSA is to acknowledge that you have reviewed the JSA and understand the task, the hazards, and what steps will be taken to protect yourself from these hazards. You have two columns. The left is to print your name, and the right is to sign your name. Next up in the JSA process is your opportunity to finalize or close out the job. This section begins with a reminder that all accidents and near misses must be reported before leaving. That said, it is a requirement that all accidents and near miss events are reported immediately or as soon as possible. Do not wait until it's time to go home before you report incidents. It then asks you some questions. First, was there any incident, injury, and/or near miss? Second, was this incident reported to your safety department or highest level of supervision at the job site? And third, did you clean your work area before leaving? Is all trash and debris cleaned up? Finally, there is a comment section to write anything safety related to the job. You can go into more detail about incidents that happened, stop work actions that took place, and any safety concerns that delayed the work. There is an opportunity for auditing of JSAs that is required at many job sites. This section allows for auditors to verify that they have reviewed your JSA. The JSA is designed to be written as a group with input from the whole crew. We all bring experiences, knowledge, and skills to the group. The JSA is a chance for us to bring those out on a job plan. The more input, the better. The JSA is not designed to have a person sit at a table, write it, and then the crew just signs their name and goes to work. This is counterproductive. Think about it. The whole crew is involved in the JSA process. You are reviewing the JSA as you develop it. When possible, write the JSA at your work area so that you can put eyes on what you're doing. Doing this helps you visualize what you will be doing and makes it easier to write the JSA. It's all about detail, drilling down to find the hazards. The more you dig, the more you uncover hazards, which will lead to more safety countermeasures, which equals safer work. The JSA is a process. The process isn't over until the job is complete. This means you are always on the lookout for additional steps, hazards, and precautions. Always stop when you encounter a problem. The answer is not to apply more force to overcome the problem. The answer is to stop, identify the issue, figure out a safe way to overcome the problem, and then address it on the JSA before resuming work every time. In addition to the JSA process, there are numerous other tools that we can use to identify hazards before we start work. Safety should be integrated into the initial planning and scheduling of the work request. This is the opportunity for management, supervision, and safety to identify key elements to perform the work safely. Standard safe operating procedures. This could be for cleaning or clearing of plant processes, equipment, or machinery, using machinery or equipment and other things. Having an established safe operating process or SOP can be very helpful in identifying hazards in routine work. Standard safe operating procedures for the startup or shutdown of plant process equipment and machinery. Shutting down and starting up machinery and equipment is critical and is very important to have established guidelines to do this safely. The locking out and tagging out and verifying isolation of potentially hazardous energy is one of Austin's life-critical safety rules. Performing this correctly without fail is critical to ensuring that all employee owners go home safely at the end of the day. Field verification of these procedures is checking to see if the plan has been implemented properly and that all requirements are being followed. Initializing and following all safe work permits for the jobs that we are carrying out. Safe work permits can include hot work, line break, confined spaces, and excavations. A permit is a way to ensure that we have performed all safety requirements before performing these critical jobs. A JSA supports these permits, it does not replace them. Performing a JSA for every job and task that we perform. Remember, no task is so minor that it does not need safe planning. Identifying hazardous chemicals that we work with and consulting the Safety Data Sheet, or SDS, to understand the hazards and precautions for using the chemicals. Performing pre-job checklists to identify hazards. This includes equipment inspections and other forms that we use to make sure that everything is operating safely before we start work. The second step in hazard recognition is analyzing the work that is taking place. This step is important because it gives us the opportunity to assess the work that is taking place and ensure that we have identified all hazards involved and taken the appropriate measures to control the hazards. We have numerous tools to ensure that we are identifying hazards and controlling them while the work is taking place. First, supervisors and craft level personnel will perform walkthrough inspections and audits. Supervisors are expected to have craft personnel accompany them along audits because this gives supervision the opportunity to coach them in recognizing the hazards that they see. This helps develop the hazard recognition at the craft level. Supervisors should get with management if they need help in figuring out how to do this. Members of management are expected to conduct audits on jobs that they visit and to take members of supervision along with them as well. Performing equipment inspections to ensure that they are in safe operating condition. Much of the equipment that we operate has the potential to be very dangerous if it is not operating properly. Documented inspections each shift and visual walk around each use will help eliminate the dangers of improperly operating machinery. Management systems are the programs, policies, procedures, and standards that we have established within the company and at the job site. Performing management system audits ensures that the programs, policies, procedures, and standards that we have in place are current and adequate to protect our employee owners. Performing simple observations of your workplace while you are working and taking a 30-second safety pause are effective hazard recognition while the work is taking place. Performing industrial hygiene surveys to ensure that environmental hazards cannot affect our employee owners. Some of the key industrial hygiene monitoring that we do is around hearing conservation and chemicals, stainless steel welding, noise exposure, and certain chemical exposure may require industrial hygiene monitoring. So if you have these on your job site, get with your manager to make sure that we have performed the testing and have adequate protection. We all know that good housekeeping leads to good workplace safety. Performing housekeeping audits can help identify unsafe areas that need attention. Many plants use housekeeping systems such as 5S to get your manager if you think a housekeeping system may work for your job site. Before starting any new task, regularly throughout your task, or when you encounter a problem, the 30-second safety pause is an opportunity for you to stop and ask yourself some of the following questions. Do I know exactly what I am doing? Is there any potential that I could hurt myself? Are there any questions that I should be asking fellow employees? Should I talk to my supervisor? Should the health and safety team be consulted? Do I fully understand the procedures relating to this job? Am I using the proper tools? Should I be using additional or other types of PPE? Will I be working as safely as I know how? Do I see anything that just doesn't look quite right? Am I in a hurry? Would it be safer if I slowed down? Each of these questions should be answered to your full satisfaction before you proceed with the work. Remember, no job is so important or so urgent that you cannot take the time to do it safely the first time. Another take on this is the 20-20-20 rule, which means every 20 minutes, pause for 20 seconds and look 20 feet in every direction to see if everything looks safe and in place. Another thing that is very important to practice is stopping when you encounter a problem with your work. Sometimes you just can't get that bolt to loosen, you can't get the load over the floor, or you can't get the cylinder lifted out of the chamber. All too often we think the answer is just get a bigger hammer, and usually this leads to accidents. What we should do in these situations is stop. Identify the problem, identify a safe solution, and proceed with carrying the work out safely. Most of the time, just stopping when we encounter a problem is all it takes to realize what we are doing is unsafe. The final stage of hazard recognition is identifying the hazard that caused an accident, analyzing the hazard, and taking steps to control the hazard and prevent it from occurring again. There are several tools that assist us in analyzing the hazard after it has occurred. First, performing a root cause analysis to identify exactly what caused an accident. Communication is key. Once you have completed an investigation on your job site, or you have received a safety flash email, it is critical that you review this information with all of your crew members on the site. Communicating these incidents and their learnings are important in preventing similar incidents from occurring. Second, we can perform action critiques to determine if our preparedness for emergency response or new process startup was adequate. Third, auditing our documentation to ensure that we have trained and planned the job properly. And finally, auditing our safety policies to ensure that they are adequate. We will discuss many of these rules in greater detail throughout this orientation. However, as an overview for safety, here are some basic safety rules. Personnel should not go into any processing units unless they have business there, and they have been directed to be there by their supervisor. When walking through the plant, stay on authorized roads and to the left. Walk towards oncoming traffic. Do not cross between or under rail cars. Observe speed limits in the customer facilities and make sure the road that you are traveling on is an open road. Do not pass slow moving vehicles or equipment. Because of other contractors working in the same area, check around you before you start work. Obey all safety signs because they are reminders of the hazards around you. All employee owners must be thoroughly familiar with the location and the use of all safety equipment in their work area. For example, safety showers, fire extinguishers, eye wash stations, and fire alarm stations. Motor vehicles should not be left running while they are unattended. Tools, machinery, and equipment must have all guards securely in place before being placed into operation. Report all accidents and injuries to your supervisor and/or safety representative immediately. Under no circumstances should you leave your working shift without reporting an accident or an injury and receiving medical attention when necessary. In the event of an accident, no matter how small, your supervisor and Austin must be notified. Fire retardant clothing, or FRC, may be required for certain aspects of your work. Hair must be kept above the collar, and this includes facial hair. Head hair or facial hair may be pinned up, used with a hairnet or beard net, or cut or trimmed to ensure that it is not a safety hazard. Use proper lifting techniques. Lift items with your legs and not your back. Do not attempt to lift items weighing more than 50 pounds by yourself. Get help or use mechanical means to lift it. All employee owner tools should be identified by initials or other means. Report any lost or stolen tools to your supervisor immediately. For the following safety rules, immediate disciplinary action up to and including termination will be taken. Drinking and or possession of alcoholic beverages on the job site. Fighting, gambling, and insubordination. Possession of firearms or other weapons on plant property. Illegal possession or use of narcotics. Theft or damage to company or personnel property. Leaving the job site or plant without permission. Smoking in unauthorized areas. Violation of safety rules or procedures. Refusal to work as directed. Creating or contributing to unsanitary or poor housekeeping conditions. Sleeping on the job site at any time. Continuous late arrival for work and excessive absenteeism. Employee owners failing to work in a safe manner or that disobey the safety rules and regulations of Austin Industrial or those safety rules of our customers will be subject to disciplinary action up to and including termination. Disciplinary action could be in the form of a written warning in your personnel file, time off without pay, or being discharged or terminated. It is the policy of Austin Industrial that all employees wear reasonable work clothes that covers their body. At a minimum, you are required to wear the following. Safety glasses. Shirts should cover the upper arm at a minimum. Sleeveless shirts are not allowed, and some job sites require long sleeves. Long, sturdy work pants are required. The pants are usually made up of sturdy denim or canvas material. Cotton sweatpants and polyester windbreaking pants are not allowed. Shorts or capri type pants will also not be worn. Leather type shoes or boots with a steel or composite toe and a 1/2 inch defined heel shall cover the feet to provide protection from the elements and usual hazards encountered in the work environment at project work sites. No open-toed shoes, including flip-flops or sandals, is allowed. Fire protective clothing may be required at some locations and will be provided if needed. If so, the sleeves cannot be rolled up in these areas. No clothing containing offensive images or language will be tolerated. Hand injuries are the most common types of injuries that we have at Austin Industrial. Think about it. When you're working, what do you use the most? Commonly, it's your hands. So our hands are constantly exposed to hazards. Our hands are one of the most vital tools that we have. Imagine how much you use your hands every single day. Use them to write, to cook, to turn wrenches, to start your car, or to pick up your children or grandchildren. Imagine not being able to pick up or hold or grasp or feel or do any of the things that we take for granted every day with our hands. Taking care of our hands is a top priority at Austin Industrial. By doing everything possible to protect our hands, we can ensure that we always have the ability to do things that we talked about before. The first thing that we have to do is plan our work for safety. We use JSAs and other tools to ensure that we are looking out for pinch points and line of fire hazards. Pinch points are any area where a part of your body can become trapped or mashed in between two objects. Being in the line of fire means having your body or hands in the path of moving objects that can cause harm. We want to avoid the conditions at all costs. Once we have planned for pinch points and line of fire hazards, we need to constantly be aware and looking out for these hazards as our job progresses. PPE is important, but most importantly is simply not placing our hands in areas where they can be injured. Prevention is better than protection. PPE glove usage plays an important role. Secondary only to avoiding placing our hands in hazardous areas where they can be injured. Selecting the right glove for the job is critical. You may need leather gloves for general tasks, cut-resistant gloves for handling sharp material, but remember, cut-resistant does not mean cut-proof. Avoid placing our hands where they can be injured. You may need chemical-resistant gloves for certain chemical handling. You may need protective gloves for first aid or drug tests. So selection is important. There is no one-size-fits-all for the types of hazards that we face. Finally, make sure that the gloves you select fit properly so that they are comfortable and do not create a greater hazard for your work. In order to better protect our hands, Austin Industrial has the 10 cardinal rules for hand safety. First, keep hands away from pinch points and crushing hazards. A large number of hand and finger injuries result when they are caught between objects. This happens frequently when handling materials. Inspect materials for slivers, jagged edges, burrs, and rough or slippery surfaces. Second, always consider good hand ergonomics, which is the position that your hands are in when they are performing tasks. Third, use the correct hand tools for the job and use them properly. Fourth, always wear the proper gloves according to the thorough hazard assessment or job safety analysis. Never wear gloves when working around rotating equipment. Fifth, remove all jewelry before performing work. Sixth, make sure that all equipment and safety guarding is in place before beginning any job and that it stays in place until the job is completed. Seventh, always de-energize and perform lockout-tagout with verifying zero energy state on machinery and equipment before reaching in to repair, clean, maintain, or make adjustments. Eighth, use a cloth or a brush when cleaning up. Never use your fingers or your hand. Ninth, know the danger zones. And finally, 10th, practice good personal hygiene. Keep your hands clean. Don't ignore hand injuries no matter how minor they may seem. Know the signs of dermatitis and other skin disorders and get prompt medical attention when needed. ANSI approved Z89 hard hats will be worn in all areas of the plant at all times if required by your facility. Specific areas have been designated that do not require the use of a hard hat. These areas are typically offices, lunchrooms, contractor compounds, enclosed vehicles. Do not write or draw on your hard hats. And remember, hard hats have a 5-year life, and the suspensions on hard hats should be changed every 1 to 2 years. ANSI approved Z87 safety glasses with side shields will be worn at all times while in areas of the plant, including to and from the gate at the beginning and the end of your shift. You can determine if your glasses meet this requirement by looking on the inside of the arms of the glasses. Prescription safety glasses must have side shields in place at all times. If you wear prescription glasses that are not ANSI Z87 approved, you will have to wear a different pair of glasses or safety glasses designed to fit over your prescription glasses. Safety goggles must be worn in designated hazardous areas or when performing a job with tools or materials that require goggles to be worn. For example, chemical handling. Goggles may also be required to be used along with a face shield depending on the hazard. Safety face shields must be worn with goggles, safety glasses in designated areas as well as with specified tool usage. Anytime you have the potential for hazards to come into contact with your face, for example, if you are grinding, you will need to wear the required face shield. Anytime you are in a plant operating unit where signs are posted, hearing protection must be worn. A combination of both earplugs and earmuffs may be required to reduce high noise levels. Operating pumps, compressors, exchangers, and many types of tools are some of the examples of high noise level equipment. Whenever we are in an area where noise levels can occasionally increase to a dangerous to your ears level, you must wear the proper hearing protection. When working in an area where noise levels are at a constant level at or above the recommended 85 decibels, hearing protection must be worn. A good rule of thumb is if you are unable to talk to a person standing a few feet away without raising your voice or yelling, the noise level is too high and you should be wearing hearing protection. Some examples of this include welding machines, escaping steam equipment, and power tool usage. Falls are the leading cause of fatalities in our industry. That is why it is critically important that we work together to prevent and protect you from a fall hazard. Here at Austin Industrial, we have a duty and a responsibility to provide you with adequate fall protection training and equipment. Once you have received this instruction and equipment, it is your responsibility, with the help of Austin Industrial, to use the fall protection training and equipment to prevent and protect you from falls. The way to protect yourself from falls is to prevent them. However, since prevention is not always possible, suitable fall protection is equally important. The way that we ensure that we go home safely each day when dealing with fall hazards is through a 4-step process. First, we have to identify the hazard and determine how we can control or eliminate it. Next, we need to select the appropriate method of fall prevention and protection. Third, before the use of fall protection or prevention, we need to inspect it. And finally, we need to properly use the fall protection to keep ourselves safe. Fall prevention and protection must be provided on any walking or working surface that is, depending on your location, 4 or 6 feet or more above a lower level, or any area where a fall could cause an injury. Using your JSA and inspecting the work area will help you determine if fall hazards are present that need to be eliminated or controlled. Selecting the right method of fall protection is vitally important in keeping you safe. There is no one-size-fits-all solution, so it may be a combination of several methods or protection components, such as guardrails, harness and lanyard, self-retracting lifelines, or beamers or horizontal lifelines. Do you remember us talking about the hierarchy of controls in our hand safety section? Pretty much everything that we do to keep ourselves safe should fall within the hierarchy of controls, beginning with eliminating the hazard, all the way down to using personal protective equipment. Inspecting your harness is a 3-step process in which you will want to begin by inspecting the webbing, which is the fabric material on the harness. Inspect it for damage including burns, cuts, nicks, and/or frays. Next, you will want to inspect the stitching. The stitching of the harness are areas where the webbing is stitched together. Inspect for damage, busted stitches, burns, or cuts. And then finally, you want to inspect the hardware, which is all of the metal components on the harness. You want to inspect for bent, broken, or warped or damaged metal components. Wearing a harness and putting on the harness as well as taking it off, which we refer to as donning or doffing the harness, is important to ensure your safety. First, you will want to grasp the harness by the back D-ring and back plaque. Be certain that the straps are not twisted and inspect for damage. Place the harness over the arms and onto the shoulders. Shoulder straps should remain vertical on the chest. Grasp the leg straps and connect to the buckles attached to the straps on each hip. Insert excess strap through the keepers. Leg straps should be snug. Attach the chest strap by passing the male buckle through the female buckle. Strap should be at least to the upper chest level and retain excess strap with the keeper. To tighten the shoulders, pull up on free ends of the straps, and to loosen, push down on the adjuster. Straps should be adjusted to the same length. The back D-ring should be centered between the shoulder blades. To adjust, slide the D-ring and the plaque up or down along the webbing. A properly fitted harness should be snug but not tight enough to prevent normal movement. Always properly adjust the harness before use. Training issues and proper personal protective equipment selection remain problematic for fall protection. Many workers wear loosely fitted harnesses for comfort, and the lanyard and the attachment D-ring somewhere in the middle of the back instead of between the shoulder blades per the fitting instructions. This would expose the wearer to possible whiplash or bell ringing injury in the event of a fall. When wearing your harness, you must be anchored to a secure location in the event of a fall. An anchor point must be able to support up to 5,000 pounds. Generally, that's more than most cars weigh. Some unacceptable anchor points include screwed pipe, conduit, cable trays or tray rungs, handrails, steam lines, insulated lines, PVC pipe, firewater or deluge piping, piping supported by hangers, bleeders, or any part of a valve, and ladder cages and rungs. Acceptable anchor points include structural I or H beams, engineered lifelines, properly installed scaffold guardrails. Some piping may be acceptable for use as anchorage. Employee owners must verify piping as acceptable anchorage with the appropriate customer representative, for example, the customer's HSE department. Fall distance remains an important part in our fall protection. Most harness and lanyard combinations require a minimum of 18.5 foot of clearance in the event of a fall. What do you do if there is not 18.5 foot of clearance below an anchor point? The most common solution is to use a full body harness and a SRL or self-retracting lifeline for any clearances less than 18.5 feet. Anchoring at a high point is extremely important. OSHA requires us to limit free fall to less than 6 foot. Additionally, anchoring at a high point provides the ability to self-recover in the event of a fall. Another hazard to keep in mind is swing fall. We want to minimize free fall, and by doing so we can prevent swing pendulum effect. Swing fall is a pendulum type fall that can occur when an anchorage is not located directly above a worker's head. Although a swing fall is not hazardous in and of itself, the hazard exists if a worker during the fall swings or comes into contact with an obstruction. Further, the cutting action of a sharp edge can be multiplied when a lanyard swings along. This can damage the lanyard. Always try to stay directly under your tie-off point. As part of our responsibility to provide employee owners with a safe and healthful work environment, free of recognized hazards, at Austin Industrial, we have a duty to prevent dropping objects during the course of our work. Additionally, we must protect other workers, material, and equipment nearby from any dropped objects during the course of our work. Prevention of dropped objects and protection of workers and equipment is a high priority safety requirement. Prevention and protection against dropped objects is not a single event, but a continual, overlapping process involving everyone on the work site. Everyone on the work site, including those that work at elevated locations, must be trained in dropped object prevention and protection. Items lifted with ropes where knots are used and rigging must be lifted by certified riggers. All job sites will use at least one of 3 levels of control to prevent and protect against dropped objects. Those levels are restrain, constrain, and access control. Restrain involves the use of devices such as tool lanyards to restrain items from falling in the event that they are dropped. Constrain is the utilization of netting or other equipment to keep material from falling to lower levels. Access control means erecting barricades to keep unauthorized people away from the hazards. Barricades must block access from all sides. Signs must be in place to warn about the hazards. You've probably seen the signs on the backs of tanker trucks and rail cars, on pressure vessels, and even secondary bottle containers. Hazardous communication, or HazCom, is how the hazards of a chemical are communicated to people. Being an employee owner means that you are included in the HazCom program. You have the right to know the hazards of the chemicals that you are working with. In addition to labels on containers, safety data sheets, or SDS, contain all of the information about chemicals, including the signs and symptoms of exposure, first aid and CPR measures, as well as firefighting methods and required PPE. You can obtain copies of the chemical SDS as well as our written HazCom program by asking your supervisor. The Globally Harmonized System, or GHS, is an international approach to hazard communication, providing the agreed criteria for classification of chemical hazards and a standardized approach to label elements and safety data sheets. It was developed by the United Nations, and the GHS is updated every 2 years. OSHA has modified the hazard communication standard to adopt the GHS to improve safety and the health of workers through more effective communications on chemical hazards. This new system will standardize chemical labels and chemical classification worldwide. Employers must train their employees in understanding the change from material safety data sheets, or MSDS, to safety data sheets, or SDS. Employers must train their employees on the new label elements as well as the new SDS sheet format. And finally, chemical manufacturers have to update their labels and safety data sheets. Chemical manufacturers must now evaluate and classify chemicals according to the GHS. GHS classification system recognizes two categories of chemical hazards: health hazards and physical hazards. Chemicals which are classified as health hazards can cause health problems ranging from mild allergic reactions to death. Physical hazards threaten worker safety and create or contribute to unsafe conditions, for example, fires, explosions, and chemical reactions. Appendix C of the standard explains how chemicals must be labeled in a standardized format. Chemical labels must include the following information: product name, pictogram, signal word, hazard statement, precautionary statement, and contact information. The MSDS will now be referred to as the SDS, or Safety Data Sheet, and now are required to follow a standardized format. SDS sheets will contain 16 numbered sections in numerical order. Some of the information included on these safety data sheets is identification of the chemical, hazard identification, stability and reactivity of the chemical, ecological information, disposal considerations, first aid, and firefighting measures. On chemical containers, pictograms are used internationally to clearly identify the health and physical hazards of the product. 5 pictograms are used for physical hazards, 4 pictograms are used for health hazards, and 1 pictogram is used for environmental hazards. Pictograms for physical hazards include explosives, flammable liquids, oxidizing liquids, compressed gases, and corrosive metals. Pictograms for health hazards include acute toxicity, skin corrosion, skin irritation, and CMR STOT aspiration hazard. And finally, the pictogram for environmental hazards is hazardous to aquatic environment. In compliance with the Occupational Safety and Health Act, all employee owners have right of access to records of relevant exposure to toxic substances or harmful physical agents and medical records. To access these records, employee owners must contact their supervisor or Alston's Human Resource Department. A copy of OSHA 1910.1020 or 1926.33 is readily available to all employee owners by contacting the Human Resources Department of Alston Industrial. You have the right to review any of OSHA's safety regulations applicable to your work. You may also review any of Alston or the customer's written safety programs applicable to your safety on any job. At Alston Industrial, anytime you are working on machinery, equipment, electrical installations, or pipelines, all potential hazardous stored energy will be isolated to prevent an accidental release while you are working on those lines or equipment. Not isolating energy sources can lead to severe injury or death if the energy is not controlled and isolated. Accidental releases of energy are the most common cause of injury. Not planning, identifying, and controlling all energy sources is the most common factor in accidental release. There are many types of energy sources that we face in the industrial environment every day. Some common examples are electrical energy, mechanical energy, hydraulic energy, pneumatic energy, thermal energy, residual stored energy, gravity, and pressurized liquids, gases, or chemicals. We have many types of isolation devices that we can use to control hazardous energy. First, we must list our methods of control on the energy isolation plan or the clearance procedure forms. Then we can apply locks, tags, mechanical blocks, blinds, and double block and bleed methods for protection. In an energy isolation procedure, there are steps that you must follow in order to properly, effectively, and safely isolate equipment for work. First, notify all affected personnel that the equipment is going to be shut down and isolated. This may be people outside of Austin Industrial. Use your energy isolation plan to identify and list all isolation points for the equipment that controls the release of hazardous stored energy. Shut down the equipment by closing valves, turning off machines, disconnecting electrical power, and other sources. Fourth, place your energy isolation device with an identification tag on the equipment. This can be a single lock, a group hasp, or a group lockbox. Once the energy is isolated, attempt to start the equipment or test the electrical equipment to make sure all energy is dissipated. You are now ready to start your work. When you are finished, ensure all work is complete. Remove the isolation devices following your energy isolation plan. Alert all affected personnel that equipment will be started up. Remember, every affected person has the right and the responsibility to visually verify that all isolation points have been isolated. You will receive an in-depth training for locking out and tagging out at the facility where you are working. If you do not feel comfortable at this time, please ensure that you notify your supervisor of your concern. Austin follows the OSHA Assured Equipment Grounding Conductor program. This ensures that the tools that we use are appropriately grounded to protect the user. Some things to remember about power tools are: inspect the tool before you use it. Although tools are inspected at a designated frequency, damage can occur during that time. You want to look at the cord for any damage to the casing of the tool, broken or exposed wires, and missing ground or conductor prongs. Power tools are inspected on a monthly basis by a qualified person, monthly or quarterly, depending on the site. Tools are checked for grounding, which ensures that the tool has a low resistance path to ground should something go wrong. Tools are also used for continuity, ensuring that there is not a short in the circuit. Ground fault circuit interrupters, or GFCI, are used for all power tools, and the GFCI should be plugged into the power source. There are two pictures of GFCIs that we are seeing. One is an external GFCI, and the other is a GFCI that is built into the receptacle. Power tools that are checked will have a piece of colored tape that will be placed on the tool to verify inspection. Inspection will also be documented on a form each time that they are inspected. Each site will use a monthly color code chart so that you can ensure that your tools have been inspected at the appropriate frequency. This chart is an example of an Austin standard color code. In order to work on electrical equipment, you must first be qualified. Under no circumstances should you work on electrical equipment or circuits until proper training has been given to you. When working on electrical equipment circuits, a job safety analysis must be implemented and communicated to all applicable employees. Take these steps to assure that electrical work is conducted properly. Implement a JSA on all electrical work. Disconnect all circuits and equipment from the electrical sources whenever you are working on or near the electrical hazard, and use proper lockout and tagout procedures. Ensure that all stored energy is released from capacitors. Prior to starting work, always recheck or turn on equipment to make sure that it is inoperable. For equipment operators, be cautious of overhead power lines. If work concerns overhead power lines, then those lines shall be disconnected or de-energized. Unqualified workers shall be instructed of the hazards, and the location of the work shall be such that the employee and the longest conductive object he or she may use cannot come into contact to any unguarded electrical overhead line at the following distance. For 50 kilovolts or below, a minimum of 10 foot. For 50 kilovolts and above, 10 foot plus 4 inches for every 10 kilovolt over 50 kilovolts. Do not work in the vicinity of overhead power lines or any other exposed electrical conductor with the conductive equipment such as aluminum ladders, jewelry, bull floats, or other metal objects. Ensure that proper illumination is provided in all confined spaces and other dark areas so that work can be done safely. Assure that you are using the proper voltage for lights. Personal protective equipment, or PPE, shall be worn in confined spaces or enclosed spaces that contain exposed energized parts. PPE may consist of protective barriers and shields or insulating materials. Do not perform housekeeping duties or any other duties in the proximity of exposed electrical parts. At Austin, any electrician that is performing work on or near exposed energized conductors will be trained in the appropriate electrical safety training, which includes the NFPA 70E electrical training. A ladder, stairway, runway, ramp, or other specified means of access shall be provided whenever there is a break in elevation of 19 inches or more. At least one point of access is to be kept clear of obstructions at all times. Prior to utilizing the ladders, employees shall inspect them periodically. A stairway and ladder competent person shall be established on the job site and monitor inspection of ladders and stairways. Additionally, ladders on the Austin job sites will be made of fiberglass and not wood or aluminum. When using ladders, the top must be tied off securely. When using extension ladders, the ladder must extend 3 feet above the working surface. Ensure that there are no cords, hoses, leads, or other material at the base of the landing of the ladder that could pose a trip hazard to the person using the ladder. Anytime that you are using a ladder, be sure to climb and descend it using 3 points of contact, which means 2 hands and 1 foot or both feet and 1 hand in contact with that ladder at all times. Always face the ladder when you are climbing up and climbing down, and be cautious to not overextend or overreach, which could cause you to fall off the ladder. And finally, do not stand on the top or the last rung of the ladder toward the top. Work permits are forms that are issued for specific, usually highly hazardous work that ensure all appropriate safety measures have been taken and implemented to prevent an accident. Work permits are required for specific tasks. An excavation is any man-made cut, cavity, trench, or depression in an earth's surface formed by earth removal. Excavation permits are required to be issued before performing any excavation work. Excavation permits are issued by a competent person to ensure that the appropriate safety measures are taken before working in and around an excavation. Excavations that are 4 feet or deeper requires an entry permit and a hole watch as a confined space. Excavations that are 4 feet or deeper require access to be provided at intervals no farther than 25 feet apart. That being said, OSHA requires excavations at 5 feet or more to have protective systems such as sloping, shoring, benching, or shielding to ensure that there is not a cave-in. Barricade all excavations and place tags on the barricade. Specific rules apply if a dirt pile will be used to barricade one side of the excavation. A trained, competent person must supervise the excavation activities. Employees must be trained in the hazards associated to the excavation. Employees and supervisors must watch out for water accumulation. Access and egress must be established for all employees who enter the excavation. Accumulation of dirt, spoils, and materials cannot be within 2 feet of an open excavation. All excavations will be classified as Class C soil, and sloping or benching protection will be on a 1.5 horizontal to 1 vertical. A line break permit must be issued before breaking into any line or opening or closing any valve. This ensures that steps have been taken to isolate the hazardous material and ensure that an accidental release will not happen. Line breaking is a potentially dangerous work practice that we encounter every day. When a process or pipeline needs to be worked on at some point in time, it will have to be open, exposing employees to the contents within the pipe. Therefore, it is critical to take every safety precaution possible when performing this type of work. Anytime we are required to open a pipeline, the following precautions will be followed. The supervisor will initiate and obtain appropriate permits applicable to the work. These permits will contain all necessary information for performing the work safely. If you have any question about line breaking, ask your supervisor before you start. As with any task, you will be required to prepare and review a job safety analysis before starting work. This JSA will cover the steps to complete the line break procedure, the hazards involved, and the precautions and safety measures that will be taken to protect employees during the line break task. Ensure that all piping and lines are depressurized and the lockout of energized equipment and lines have been established. Valves will be closed and locked out. Never depend on a check valve to prevent flow. Use all the proper PPE as though the line or equipment was pressurized. This includes goggles and face shields to protect the face, chemical resistant gloves and clothing to protect the hands and the skin. Ask your supervisor for a copy of the Safety Data Sheet or SDS and review the SDS for the chemical to which you might be exposed. You can get a copy of the SDS from your immediate supervisor. Staying out of the line of fire is critical when making the first line break to a piece of process piping. It is important to always anticipate the line having pressure on it. When opening a line or equipment, position yourself for potential pressure. Always open the line away from you. For example, when you're breaking a flange, loosen the bolts on the opposite side that you are standing. After the pressure has diminished, you can dismantle the rest of the piping or equipment. Confined space entry is any activity which involves going into a closed environment that has a restricted entry or exit. Some key indicators for considering a confined space is the space is large enough for a worker to get into the space. The space is limited access or egress, which means limited means of entry or one way in and one way out. The space is not designed for continuous human occupancy. Some other factors to take into consideration are unfavorable natural ventilation, explosive atmosphere, too much or not enough oxygen, possibility of engulfment or cave-in, and toxic atmospheres. Some examples of confined spaces that you may see include tankers, sewers, process vessels, boilers, furnaces, pits, storage bins, excavations at 4 feet or greater, process and manufacturing machinery, and silos. If we will be performing any work in a confined space, there are certain requirements that must be met before this work begins. The first requirement is a confined space pre-entry checklist. This checklist will be performed by the confined space supervisor and is provided to assist them in verifying all necessary information to obtain a confined space entry permit. Once the checklist is complete, the permit process will begin. A confined space permit outlines all necessary planning and safety requirements for entering the space. It will outline procedures, PPE, and engineering controls, atmospheric monitoring information, emergency rescue, as well as confined space attendant information. Responsibility for the preparation of a confined space for entry rests with the Austin Confined Space Entry Supervisor. Equipment must be properly identified and any potential hazardous energy will be isolated. This includes isolating energy sources from electrical equipment, disconnecting, blocking, bleeding, and blinding of process or chemical lines, blocking or immobilizing mechanical systems. Isolation of potential hazardous energy sources must be verified by all affected personnel, and never assume that the equipment is drained or depressurized by the operators. The confined space supervisor will also ensure that necessary information, equipment, and safeguards that will make the confined space safe are all in place before the entry is made. Some of these safety measures include ventilating equipment to keep fresh air moving within the confined space, atmospheric air monitoring and testing equipment to ensure the air quality within the space is safe for entry, any appropriate PPE required, for example, respirators, Tyvek suits, and breathing air, low voltage explosion proof lighting, and barriers and shields to protect entrance and unauthorized personnel. Before any entry is made into a confined space, proper communication will be established. Confined space attendants will have a way to communicate with confined space entrants, the confined space supervisor, and the emergency response team in the event of an emergency within the confined space. A confined space attendant will remain at the entry point of a confined space when the entrant enters the confined space. The confined space attendant and entrants must stay in contact either verbally or by sight when the entrants are in the space. Before entry into a confined space occurs, the attendant will be trained to recognize the behavior, changes, modes, signs, or symptoms of an exposure to a chemical or hazard that is within the space. For chemicals, the SDS will be reviewed before entry is made. The attendant will have means of alerting all entrants in the event of an emergency. This can mean an air horn, radios, or verbal speech. An attendant will alert the entrance if the attendant recognizes a behavior, changes, or symptoms of an exposure to a chemical or hazard within the space. Outside conditions change, such as fire, safety equipment stops working, or any other hazard outside the space. Any hazardous conditions are detected within the confined space. All entrants will exit the space immediately if a confined space attendant orders them to. The confined space attendant must know how and be able to summon the emergency rescue team or confined space supervisor if needed. The confined space attendant will never enter the confined space for rescue. The confined space attendant will only perform non-entry rescue only. Non-entry rescue includes the use of cables, ropes, or winches to remove entrants without having to enter the space. All rescue procedures, both non-entry and entry rescue, will be planned before any entry into a confined space. All methods of summoning help will be established before entering and performing work. The confined space supervisor will review possible hazards with the attendant. The confined space permit will list all possible hazards to which employees may be exposed. This includes lower explosive limits, which is the buildup of flammable or combustible gases which may ignite in a confined space. Oxygen deficiency, which is too little oxygen, a condition which cannot support human life. Oxygen enrichment, which is too much oxygen, a condition that can make a fire or explosion more catastrophic. And carbon monoxide, typically caused by internal combustion engines. Carbon monoxide is toxic to humans. The confined space attendant will remain at the point of entry to the confined space at all times. The only time a confined space attendant may leave his or her post is if the work has been completed and the permit has been terminated, or all entrants have left the space after completion or on a break, or if he or she is relieved by another trained confined space attendant that has been briefed on the hazards within the confined space. The confined space attendant will sign all entrants in and out of the confined space on the confined space entry log. The confined space attendant will maintain accurate count of all authorized entrants. The confined space attendant will remain alert, in contact with all entrants, and warn away any unauthorized entrants. Continuously observe the personnel inside the confined space. Be on the alert. Try to anticipate and prevent any conditions that would be hazardous. Attendant will perform no other duties except monitor the confined space. They should not be helping other crafts, fire watching for welders outside the space, cleaning the work area, or any other duties other than monitoring the confined space. The confined space attendant is responsible for preventing the fouling of airlines and/or lifelines from any contaminants or hazards when they are required. Be certain that you understand how to use all safety equipment, such as airlines and respirators, and rescue equipment, such as lifelines and retrieval systems. Upon completion of your job, clean and return all special equipment to its original location. If you have any questions regarding this job, the procedures, your duties, or responsibilities, ask your confined space supervisor immediately. The confined space attendant plays a critical role in the safety of working within a confined space. The confined space attendant has many important responsibilities, which include the safety and personnel working inside the confined space, maintain the conditions and requirements listed on the entry permit, Evacuate the confined space if you observe any condition which you consider to be hazardous, and to get help if any emergency develops, and render aid outside the confined space if you can do so safely. Do not enter the confined space. Only summon for help. Hot work is any activity which creates a source of ignition. Examples of hot work include welding and cutting activities, electrical and power tools, air tools, any open flames, sandblasting operations, abrasive grinding activities, electrically or internal combustion powered vehicles. You can obtain a hot work permit from the operations representative. All personnel are responsible for fire prevention. All flammable liquids, including petroleum products, paint thinners, or other flammable materials, shall be properly marked and stored as specified by current standards. Work areas shall be kept clear and free of trash and other combustible materials. All waste materials must be disposed of properly in accordance with current standards. Fires in industry can be very dangerous and account for numerous injuries and property damage each year. Because of this, we have implemented safety measures to prevent and control the damage caused by fires. One of these safety measures are the use of personnel as a fire watch. A fire watch is a person that has been trained to look for the hazards that could lead to a fire. For example, flammable or combustible products within a hot work area. Fire prevention is key. We want to prevent fires from occurring in the first place rather than fighting fires. A fire watch is a person that is constantly alert and looking for fires that occur during hot work activities. A fire watch is trained to use firefighting equipment and knows how to use this equipment to fight minor fires. A fire watch is trained to report fires to the appropriate plant personnel using call boxes or alarm pull stations. A fire watch is responsible for ensuring that flammable or combustible material in the work area is prevented from igniting. This involves removing the flammable or combustible material or protecting it using fireproof covering or wet down methods. Fire watch duties will be dependent on the specific job. However, a fire watch will stop the job if he or she observes any condition which may be hazardous. A fire watch will maintain the conditions and requirements listed on the hot work permit. These include having firefighting equipment on hand and maintaining your post after hot work is completed. Should a fire occur, report the fire immediately using a call box, emergency alarm pull station, or other plant-specified emergency reporting procedures. When possible, immediately extinguish any minor or incipient fires and notify your supervisor. At Austin Industrial, we are not trained firefighters. Therefore, we will not attempt to extinguish fires that are large and out of control. We will only attempt to extinguish fires that are small and minor. If for any reason you feel that you are in danger or your escape route may be blocked by the fire, leave the area immediately. In order to have a fire, 3 things must be present. 1, you must have a fuel source. This source is something that is capable of igniting and being burned as fuel. This could be trash, chemicals, electrical equipment, or other common things found in the workplace. You must have a source of ignition. This could be a spark or even friction from objects. Finally, you must have oxygen in order to have a fire. It only takes a small amount of oxygen to support combustion, and the normal amount of air that we breathe contains plenty of oxygen to support a fire. If you remove any one of these elements, a fire cannot occur. Use this triangle in your daily duties to determine how you can prevent a fire. At times, it will be as simple as removing the fuel, This means removing flammables or combustibles in the area that can cause a fire. Simple housekeeping is important in fire prevention. Other times you will have to remove the ignition source. This can include using non-sparking explosion-proof tools. And sometimes you will have to remove the oxygen element. This is common in performing hot tap type work. Fire watch duties are critical to the prevention and protection of employees. These duties are dependent upon the specific job. However, the following duties are basic to all jobs requiring a fire watch. Do not leave the job site while welding or spark producing operations are in progress unless you are properly relieved by another trained fire watch. These instructions must be passed on to your relief. Before the job starts, but also during progress of the job, survey the entire area for potential release of flammable liquids or vapors. Also, be on the lookout for possible operating upsets, making sure that operators at nearby units are aware of the work in progress. Notify craftsmen of any observed actions by others that could release flammable liquids or vapors into the area and if a fire is occurring in the area. Determine the exact location of firefighting equipment in the immediate area. Be certain that you know how to operate this equipment. Be on the alert. Try to anticipate and prevent any condition that would be hazardous. Upon completion of the job, remain in the area for the time specified on the hot work permit. Typically, this will be between 30 and 60 minutes after all hot work has ended. Depending on the requirements of the permit, return any firefighting equipment to the original location. There are 4 classes of fires. Class A is ordinary combustibles such as paper, wood, and trash. Class B is petroleum products such as gasoline and diesel fuel. Class C is electrical fires occurring on electrical components. Class D is combustible metals such as titanium, combustible metal dust, and magnesium. Most extinguishers will be Class A, B, C, but it is important to check your fire extinguisher before starting work and ensuring that you have the right extinguisher for your job. When you get your fire extinguisher, you must inspect it for: check to see if the gauge reads full. The arrow indicator will usually be in a green zone. Ensure it has a monthly inspection record and that the record inspection is up to date. Ensure the retaining pin is in place and that the extinguisher has not been used before. Check the annual inspection record and check for any damage to the body of the extinguisher or any components which could affect its use. Remember to only fight a fire after you have sounded the alarm and it is safe to do so. If at any time you feel like your safety is in jeopardy, leave the area immediately. To fight a fire, remember the PASS method. P stands for pull the safety pin at the top of the extinguisher. This will allow the lever to be depressed, releasing the extinguishing media. A is for aim the extinguisher at the base of the fire. The base of the fire is where fuel comes from, so do not aim at the flames, aim at the base of the fire. S is for squeeze the handle on the fire extinguisher. This will cause the extinguisher to dispense the fire extinguishing media. And finally, the other S is for sweep the nozzle of the extinguisher from side to side, fully covering the base of the fire. Respirators are very important pieces of personal protective equipment that are vital to keeping the wearer's breathing air uncontaminated. There are many important aspects to using a respirator other than just putting it on. This includes Wearing the proper respirator identified by supervisor to ensure it offers adequate protection from the hazards you will face. Wear the respirator according to training received and instructions in these guidelines. Properly clean and store reusable respirators to prolong its life and effectiveness. Report respirator problems and defects immediately to your supervisor. Be trained in respiratory protection procedures and requirements for a respirator's use. Austin will only use respirators that are approved and certified by NIOSH or MSHA. Respirator selection is based on the job task, contaminant, and expected concentration range of contaminants. Historical hazard contaminant exposure monitoring may be used to determine the expected amount exposure range. Only employees current in the 3 categories of fit testing, training, and medical examination will be issued respirators. Employees will be issued only those respirators on which they have been trained and passed a fit test. Respirators will be cleaned when required. Respirators will be stored in a plastic bag in a clean, dry place not exposed to sunlight. Storage must not distort the respirator facepiece in any way. For example, do not leave the respirator under tools or crushed by a box. Each department is responsible for providing their respirator user employees with the storage bag. All respirator users who may periodically use a respirator as equipment as part of their regular job must be certified by the Austin Medical Department that they are physically able to wear a respirator. Qualitative or quantitative fit testing will be conducted for all air purifying respirator users before they wear a respirator. Nothing shall interfere with the sealing surface of the respirator. Each employee must be clean shaven per the Austin facial hair policy before a fit test will be conducted. The facial hair policy diagram is in your employee safety handbook. Positive and negative pressure fit checks will be conducted every time a respirator is put on. A scaffold is any temporary platform that is used to support work people and or materials. All scaffolds will be erected under the supervision of a competent person. Scaffolds will be inspected and tagged. The tagging system used to identify a scaffold status is as follows. A green tag scaffold is an approved scaffold. A yellow tag scaffold has modifications that affect the guardrail system, and fall protection is required at all times. Note, on some sites, there is no green tag, only yellow tag, which means all scaffold users will be required to wear fall protection at all times. And finally, a red tag signifies that the scaffold is not to be used. Scaffolds over 6 feet in height must have toe boards and barricade tape under the area or work. Materials being hoisted onto a scaffold shall have a tagline. Tools, equipment, and materials must not be allowed to accumulate on a scaffold. Only keep on the scaffold what you need to use. Materials, tools, and other items shall be hoisted to the scaffold using a bucket. All scaffolds must be inspected by a competent person. To ensure the scaffold has been inspected, check the scaffold tag at the access ladder of the scaffold. Ensure that the scaffold is set up on a firm foundation. Ensure that scaffolding is plumb and level. Visually inspect the scaffolding for yourself and report any damage. Do not allow materials or tools to accumulate on the scaffold planks. Wear fall protection when required at a 100% tie-off. Exit a mobile scaffold before it is moved. Keep the scaffolding clear and clean. Do not climb on the rails of the scaffold. Access the scaffold using the fixed ladder. And scaffold must be 15 feet from power lines. Preparation for heat and cold stress is dependent on your job, location, and the hazards present. If you are working in a hot climate, you will receive Austin heat stress training, especially between the months of May and October. If you are working in a cold climate, you will receive Austin cold stress training. When moving objects around the job site, it can be strenuous on your body, and you can encounter hazards that could cause serious injury if we are not extremely careful. As with all jobs that we perform, it is expected that you plan safety into the task of moving objects using your Austin JSA form. The first thing you will want to do is inspect your route of travel. Whether you are carrying objects, using hand trucks, a pallet jack, forklift, or other means of moving objects around the job site, it is important that you figure out where you're going and identify any hazards that you may encounter and implement safety precautions to protect you from these hazards. Look for movable obstructions and remove them. These can be bolts, nuts, trash, debris, and other objects in the route of travel. Look for stationary obstructions and avoid or figure a safe way to move the object. Stationary objects can be pipes, bollards, or even surface conditions such as holes or seams in the floor. Always secure the load to the moving device to prevent displacement when moving or encountering obstacles. If you encounter a problem with moving objects, stop. Figure out what the problem is and figure out a way to overcome the problem safely. Many times, we will try to use brute force to free the movement from the obstruction. This is not solving the problem and can easily lead to further hazards and even injury. Finding the problem and removing the problem is the safest way to address this. Talk to your supervisor if you cannot solve the issue. Austin has a 50-pound lifting rule in which no EO can lift more than 50 pounds by themselves. Many people think this means 2 people can lift 100 pounds, 3 people can lift 150 pounds, and so on. However, this is usually not the case. When you are lifting as a team, the weight is rarely evenly distributed, and when one person lowers a load before the other, the weight will shift to the person lowering the first part of the load. Communicating and moving in sync is critical when team lifting loads. It is also critical to use safe lifting techniques at all times. This includes keeping a straight, rigid back that is not arched, keeping the load close to your body and not overreaching or overextending, using your legs to lift the load and not your back. Do not twist or jerk when moving the load. All equipment requires additional training and authorization. This includes forklifts, aerial lifts, scissor lifts, earth moving equipment, company trucks, and cranes. On equipment in use, whether you are the operator or a rider, it is important to know what the E-stop is for. The emergency stop function, or E-stop, is an extremely useful and critical function on many pieces of equipment, including aerial lifts. The E-stop kills all the power to the machine, eliminating its ability to function. The use of an E-stop in an emergency situation has the potential to save your life. As a practice, it is the operator's responsibility to ensure that the E-stop is engaged, cutting off all power to the machine before he or she will enter or exit the aerial lift. This eliminates the potential for accidental movement while you enter or exit the machine. It is also important to understand that accidentally depressing the E-stop can lead to a hazardous situation. As mentioned, in the catapulting section of this training, accidentally hitting the E-stop button while maneuvering the machine can cause it to come to an abrupt stop, which could possibly throw you, your tools, and material around or out of the basket of the machine. In addition to this orientation, there is specific additional training required to perform for some tasks. These include confined space entry, first aid, CPR training, electrical NFPA 70E arc flash training, and rigging and signaling of cranes. The wearing of personal jewelry by an employee owner assigned to work sites is restricted to wristwatches and one only stud-type earring in each earlobe. Loop, chain, dangling, or other types of earrings are prohibited. Fingernails that extend beyond the ends of fingers and other jewelry, including rings, whether worn loosely or through pierced body parts, are prohibited. Such items interfere with the intended purpose and function of normal and specifically required personal protective equipment such as gloves, respirators, harnesses, hearing protection, rubber boots, goggles, and face shields. Like other Austin industrial policies applicable to health and environmental subjects, representatives of the company Health, Safety, and Environmental Department make rulings concerning the subjects in this policy. Customer requirements may impose further restrictions concerning the subjects of this policy. At Austin Industrial, we believe that sharing our culture, vision, and experience is important to you in your development as an employee owner. We believe that the best way to achieve this is to place a new employee owner with more experienced employee owners. No matter your craft level experience, every company has different cultures, expectations, and rules. So to ease this transition of a new employee owner, we subscribe to the Austin New Employee Owner Mentoring Program. In this program, you are the new employee owner, also called a NEO. You will be assigned to a more experienced employee owner called a buddy employee owner. This program lasts for 30 days. Each day you will be evaluated by your buddy employee owner. At the end of the day, you will review things that are learned each day during your task and projects. At the end of the week, you will be evaluated by site supervision. This is the opportunity to see how well you are progressing into your role at Austin Industrial, the areas you are excelling in, and what areas need improvement. The Austin Life Safety Rules are not new rules. They have been selected because they target activities where failure to comply with the rules has the highest potential for serious injury or death. Having these same 8 life safety rules across Austin Industrial is a powerful way of ensuring a consistent culture of compliance. Compliance is mandatory for everyone while on business or on a Austin job site. Failure to comply with any life-saving rule or encouraging or tolerating rule breaking will result in disciplinary action. We must still comply with all other safety rules. Work with a valid work permit. Understand the work permit and follow it. Confirm that the work permit is valid. A face-to-face was conducted and requirements have been field verified by a work crew member. Challenge the permit writer if you are not satisfied with the permit. Confirm with the person in charge of the work that it is safe to start work. A work permit describes what you must do for your work task, the hazards associated, and the mechanisms to stay safe. Conduct atmospheric tests when required. Confirm with the person in charge of the work that the air is tested and that it is safe to start work. Stop work and notify affected personnel immediately if you sense or smell anything unusual. Personnel performing the air test are required to understand which test the work permit requires and how often, use certified or calibrated equipment for the test. Air is tested to prevent fires, explosions, and make sure that you can breathe the air safely. Verify energy isolation before work begins and use specific life-protecting equipment. Understand the isolations that protect you from danger. Confirm with the person in charge of the work that energy isolations are in place and field verified. Confirm with the person in charge of the work that it is safe to start work. Isolation separates you from danger such as electricity, pressure, toxic materials, poisonous gas, chemicals, hot liquids, or radiation to keep you safe. Specified life-protecting equipment such as breathing apparatus, electrical arc flash protection, or chemical-resistant suits protect you from danger. Obtain authorization before entering a confined space. Field verify with the person in charge of the work that all isolation devices are in place and it is safe to start work. Confirm with the attendant that you can enter a confined space. Follow the requirements of the work permit. Attendants are required to approve and control access to a confined space, have means of communication with people in the confined space. A confined space, such as a vessel, tank, or pipe, can contain explosive gas, poisonous air, or other dangers such as lack of oxygen, things that can fall on you, or that you can fall from. Authorized access keeps you safe. Obtain authorization before overriding or disabling safety critical equipment. Safety critical equipment must work correctly in order to keep you safe. Examples of safety critical equipment include, but are not limited to, isolation devices and emergency shutdown valves, lockout tagout devices and trip systems, relief valves, fire and gas alarm systems, certain level controls, alarms, and crane computers. Protect yourself against a fall. Be knowledgeable of proper selection and use for fall protection equipment. Inspect fall protection equipment prior to each use. Practice safe storage of fall protection equipment when not in use. Use fall protection equipment when working outside a protective environment when exposed to a fall to a lower level of 6 foot or greater. Prevent occupational respiratory illness and injury by protecting employees against harmful airborne contaminants encountered during work activities. Select and use the appropriate respirator based on the hazard. Know the limitations of the respirator used. Inspect the respirator before and after each use. Properly clean and store your respirator after use. Be clean shaven in the sealing surface area of the respirator. Intervene when you recognize deficiencies in field practice. Respiratory protection is to be used whenever engineering or administrative controls have not reduced potential exposures to acceptable levels. Do not intentionally walk under a suspended load. Never cross a barrier controlling an area with a suspended load without authorization. Follow the instructions of the flagman or the person in charge of the lift. A person in charge should mark the unsafe area and put barriers in place, for example, barricade with red tags. Ensure that nobody intentionally walks under a suspended load. Walking immediately under a suspended load is unsafe as the load can fall on you. A suspended load is an object that is temporarily lifted and hangs above the ground. Incidents and rule breaking will be investigated thoroughly. Failure to comply with any life safety rule will result in disciplinary action. For Austin employee owners, this includes termination of employment. For subcontractors, this includes removal from the site. If the violator is aware of the rule or required procedure through training, experience, or communication and did not comply with that rule or procedure, the maximum appropriate disciplinary action will be applied. In addition, if a supervisor sets the conditions for rule breaking or fails to follow through if one is broken, maximum appropriate disciplinary action will apply. We want our employee owners to go home safely every day. The rules are not new, and most employee owners comply with the rules every day, every time. Life safety rules are about having a high set of standards and complying with them. Austin Industrial's goal is to ensure 100% compliance with all safety policies and procedures. These life safety rules help protect all of us as well as the industries in which we work. Correct unsafe behavior and acts immediately. Interact. This concludes the training portion of the Austin New Hire Safety Orientation. But before you go, I want to take a minute to think about it only takes a minute to do things the safe way, but it only takes a moment to have an accident. So we at Austin hope that you will learn from this training course and other training courses that you will go through throughout your employment as an Austin employee owner. And you will apply those things that you have learned to keep you safe out in the field, with the ultimate goal of simply returning home to your family every single day safely.